Revitalizing Pastors. That sounds good, doesn't it? Who of us who are involved in full-time ministry, whether as a pastor, elder, deacon, or vocational Christian worker, couldn't use a shot in the arm, a sense of encouragement, especially when we have the stresses of ministry, family concerns, financial pressures, and church conflicts. The pastorate seems to be more challenging today than it's ever been. But this site is unique in that we're not looking at so much the nuts and bolts of doing ministry that you might find from other resources, as much as relating the core message of the abundant life, which we see in the New Testament, especially in Paul's letters, to relate that to our role as ministers in a more effective, vital way. There's a book that we'd like to commend to you called Revitalizing Pastors. And From Pastors to Pastors is a book that gives testimonies of a variety of leaders who have followed a pattern that you may recognize, and that is that we can have an initial commitment to full-time Christian work, but then there can be a time of disillusionment where we are fatigued, like Elisha, who needed refreshment physically, but often we can be burdened by our own sense of failure or exhaustion, and we need to be revitalized. Well, many of the testimonies in this book and biographies that perhaps you've already read lead to a place where that disillusionment becomes an opportunity, a stepping stone for a more complete understanding of and appropriation of Christ's life. You know, Galatians 2:20 is to the Christian life what John 3:16 is for evangelism. Paul could say, I've been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. But you know, there were times when earlier on in the pastorate where I could say that I really liked that verse as an inspirational verse, but it wasn't a testimonial verse until years went by when I came to that point of realizing I needed to appropriate in a meaningful, personal way what it meant to say that the old me was crucified with Christ and buried. Say goodbye to that fellow. And then to say yes to my co-resurrection and co-ascension with Christ. On this site, you're going to see resources that focus in on this clarified, simplified, and illustrated way of presenting the victorious Christian life, especially this relevant to pastors and vocational Christian workers. We hope that you'll also be interested in some resources for pastoral ministry, for church discipleship. When I was a pastor in Canada, I noticed the pattern that many of us would offer pastoral care to those who are struggling. And if we had some biblical counseling training, we may be using the Bible in counseling more as a rule book to tell people stop doing this and start doing this. But have you noticed that often believers know what they should do and how they should change, but they're often stuck in a Romans chapter 7 kind of experience where they want to change, but they don't have the power or freedom to in a practical basis. Well, I'm thankful that there is something beyond referral, beyond pastoral care, and even admonishing change. The Bible wants us to take the abundant life message of the New Testament and relate it strategically to problem solving. I remember a pastor that called Grace Fellowship years ago. He said, John, I have a master's degree from a prominent Christian school in biblical counseling, but when I sit down to help a struggling parishioner, I really don't have a model that I can depend on for real effective short-term strategic Christ-centered counseling. Well, what a joy it was to see that man come for the workshop and for the conference, and at the end of the training session for him to say that he had a new sense of competence, a new clarity, and how to lead that struggling person from where they are to where they can be through appropriating their identification with Christ. Perhaps you're in that same situation. You're looking for a greater spiritual breakthrough in your own life, or maybe more clarity in a pastoral counseling approach that can make you more effective in your public ministry and in your personal one-to-one ministry. So we invite you to take a look here at the Revitalizing Pastors ministry, to avail yourself of the video material, the sermons, the online audio, the testimonies, the other resources, and we invite you to contact us if we can encourage you to hold your hands up in intercession and encouragement in your ministry. Thank you for stopping by, and may you have a new sense of encouragement and hope in the assurance that God is the one who works in you, both to will and to work, for His good pleasure. God bless and guide you in your ministry.